Hello, a very warm welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magela Pillai, and today I have in the studio with me Sister Denise, an experienced practitioner of meditation, Rajyoga Meditation to be specific. Today's topic is entitled God's Function. God's Function. In this series, we look at a variety of subjects surrounding spirituality and how it can improve your life for the better, and also how to deepen your relationship with the Supreme. Sister Denise, a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
God's function. There are many who will be surprised to hear that God has a function.
Probably yes, but then there are many sayings that indicate that there are very specific things that God gets accomplished, and so there is a function.
Well, it stands to reason that the most famous personality in all of human history must exist for a purpose. What has been your experience of what God's function is?
Well, what God is well known for is creation. So that is a very important function. How do you cause the creation to get created? What is meant by the creation, and what sort of activity is done so that from not being created, the world is called created. So that's something. And it is said, in India, the Trinity is spoken about, Brahma, Vishnu, Shankar. And Brahma is said to be the instrument of creation. So God will perform the function of creation through an instrument, and then Vishnu, the instrument of sustenance. So God will cause the creation to get sustained through another instrument. And then it is said there is destruction through Shankar, so God will get that which is negative, that which is ungodly, to be destroyed through the instrument of Shankar. So what it shows is that God acts, but through some instruments, and the main actions are creation, sustenance, destruction. So there we have to go into some depth to find out what exactly that is. There are other functions as well.
Sister Denise, on a personal level, people who are interested in God and who desire to have a relationship with Him see His role in their lives as a very personal one. There are many who do not set foot out of their door in the morning without having communicated with God in some way. So yes, He fulfills a, for want of a better word, a business function in terms of the world, but it's also a personal function. How would you define the other aspect?
I think there is the function of accompanying you through your existence, to know that God fulfills this commitment. I am always with you. You're never alone. Always this presence, this power, this resource, always with you. That's very personal.
That creates a very beautiful feeling that I'm always with you. And it's a very nice personal mantra to have, especially in a world that is becoming increasingly unsafe.
Well, because when a person is afraid, then they always want somebody with them. And if you just have this connection with God where you can instantly go there and experience, and not to worry, I'm with you, then there's that feeling of security even in an unsafe world.
And so Denise, there are a fairly large percentage of the world who like being alone, not human company, not divine company. What would you say to such individuals?
Well, I would say that I'm one of those.
You would?
Yes,
okay.
Definitely a solitary animal, you can say, or a...
Not sure about the term animal, but go on.
Well, you know, in the animal kingdom, different animals have different characteristics which people talk about, you know, for themselves. And so they say the cat always walks alone.
Mm. I'm quite partial to polar bears, and they're also solitary creatures.
Yes. So I think that the solitary people, they like to spend a lot of time on the inside or in the inner world, or in silence. You know, I will never, if I'm going for a long journey in the car, for example, I won't switch on music or switch on the radio. I will really go into that silence and the thoughtfulness that can occur, that can be stimulated by an environment of silence. So I think the solitary people come close to themselves and also come close to God, because, you know, you can find God in the stillness, you know?
Mm-hmm. You can find God in stillness. Tell us more about that, because there are many who try to do the opposite.
We can't find God in the noise.
Well, there are many who create sound in the name of God, but you were saying that one can find God in silence. Could you share more about that?
It's paradoxical, because if you make a lot of noise to call God, maybe you don't quite understand. But there are, I mean, music is used very much as something that evokes God. So you want to, I mean, there are some forms of music, sacred music, which is all about trying to create in sound a vibration that corresponds to the feeling that you get when you feel close to God. Mm-hmm. So sacred music like that. It's kind of a sound that leads to silence, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sister Denise, there are many who perform actions in the hope of attracting God. And almost every religion across the globe, there are practices in the name of the divine. There are practices because it gives people the feeling that because I'm doing something for God, that makes me religious, that will bring God's attention to me. There's action, there's speech, and there's thought. How does this affect one's relationship with God, and what does God respond to?
You know, there's an aspect of religion and spirituality which is all to do with hospitality. And, you know, there are some people, like in Judaism, they will generally lay an extra place at the table that through a medium God will come. And you want to feed God, you want to receive God. You know, God is said to be the one who is the provider. God gives you everything you have. Your food comes from God, your talents come from God, all of this. And it's very real. A lot of people say, well, no, I go to work, I earn my own living and I feed myself. But then, you know, who gave you the intelligence? Who gave you the capacity to do that? You have to go a little further. So I think that in the relationship with God, the question of hospitality and wanting to give something to God. Of course, God is complete. You can't give something to God, but to show love, to show hospitality, to show respect is a way to, you know, draw the attention of God, because what you're trying to do is have an interaction with God. And I think if you say, I look after me, I don't need God, it's a kind of arrogance. But if you say, you know, there, but for the sake of God go I, you know, you say to yourself, you know, I am here because I am supported by God, because I'm accompanied by God because God shows me favor, that creates a relationship that enables you to have the feeling that, yes, God is with me, and I am wanting to work with God. You see, that gives, I think, an extra dimension of meaning and purpose, because if you're just for yourself, it's ultimately meaningful. Mm-hmm. But if God is a very important person in your life, though not physical, but yet very important, I think that's what gives you the inner sense of fulfillment that most people are looking for,
Mm. Mr. Denise, I see that the reason that many cling to God, talk to Him, try to communicate with Him in any way, or try to invoke Him into their lives is because of the sorrow that they experience in their lives. Sorrow seems to be a huge factor. Then you get a number of people across the globe whose life is, well, heaven. Okay, there's a happiness in all the various departments that matters to human beings the most. And so there are many who fall into the latter category, who don't believe in God because, well, they have everything. Now, sorrow is, while it may be a motivating factor, is that enough reason to engage with God on such a level, or is that, well, I don't know, using God?
There's a phenomenon which is mentioned in different prayers and statements, religious aphorisms and so on, which says, in happiness no one remembers me, but you only remember me in sorrow. And a little bit that talks about the function of God. Because, I think God's purpose is to bring everyone into happiness, but then when everybody is in happiness, then there's nothing to do. And people forget God in happiness. But when you need God, that's when you remember God. So in a way, it's a bit utilitarian, the human being's relationship with God. Of course, the highest quality of person would be the one who loves God just because God is so extraordinary and so beautiful, not because anything is needed. But these are few, these are the mystics, these are the special ones. By most people, it is, when in trouble, last resort, turn to God.
Okay. Now, Sister Denise, in terms of God's function, if an individual wants to have a fulfilling relationship with the Supreme Soul, what should my attitude be so that I'm in alignment with, God's function?
Well, I think you have to see, that you're looking for God, you're needing God because something's missing. So one of the things that's missing is clarity. So a lot of people, they want truth. They want to understand what is going on, what is this world all about. And so one of the very important functions of God is to communicate to humanity the details that are called the details of the Creator and the creation. Who is God? What is God? Where is God? What's going on? Why is the world the way it is? And so on. No one can really answer that except God, who has that perspective and who has the awareness of the totality of human history. So this is one very important function of God. And then another thing that people say to God, they say, have mercy on me, forgive me, release me. So there is that aspect of God which will liberate a person from the chains of their negative karma. And so there's a very important function of God, because people really feel miserable in these chains of sorrow and misery, and they want to be free. So that is a very singular and important function of God, to free up everyone.
Okay. Listen, Denise, there are many who are looking for proof of God's existence. You get somebody who is in dire straits and who will do some intense praying for God to remove a particular sorrow, to heal a sick child, to bring somebody back in your life who decided to leave, or get you a job. The list is endless. And then when this doesn't happen, in other words, when our sorrow is not alleviated to the extent that we would like it to be, then the feeling does an about turn, where God is then attacked or not believed in, and says, what is the point? Okay, what would be your response to that as far as God's functionality is concerned?
Well, God will respond to those who are really sincere and who have absolutely set aside their ego. But if people want to use God expedient, they don't want to do what they have to do, or they haven't set up a lot of credit with God, then of course nothing will happen, So God is not so clearly able to be understood. I think that a person who, for long period of time has kept a place in their heart for God and has always had regard for God and tried to live by what God stands for, they're creating some kind of a karma with God. And then when they do come into dire needs, God is immediately there for them. Somebody who has always disregarded God and then suddenly, everything's going wrong, so I think I'll go to God. God will say, well, I don't think so.
Okay. I like what you just shared, that we have a karma, and to put it another way, an account with God. So that's like any other bank account, isn't it? You invest, then you get interest, and the bigger your investment, the more the interest.
Yes.
And you do things like insult God, ignore God, then you can also put your account into the red.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Take us deeper through that, Sister Denise, because many people don't see it that way. You see, we have our experiences here on earth, so we don't seem to realize that we have an account with God. So we can have an account out of this world as well as in this world.
Well, there are three or maybe more. You have an account with yourself and people, souls. You have an account with nature, and you have an account with God. If you are only looking at what you as a human being can get from people and from the world, and you're on the take, then any credit that you might have had gets used up pretty quickly. But if you have a different attitude and you are what I would say as loving. Loving means, you want to give, you want to include, you want to be nice, all these things. Then you start to, put in care for nature, not waste, care for people, take time, address God, thank God, have an attitude of gratitude. All of these things create credit. And also, if you're having these kinds of very positive attitudes, you're unlikely to end up in a depressed state, for example. All these things add up.
So Denise, you used an expression on a previous episode, Karan Karavanha, and you shared that God is able to do his work through human beings. If you're, what does it take for you to become an instrument in God's vocation? How would one align oneself so that you could have the honor of God using you as He would like to? Because He doesn't use everybody; He uses a chosen few. I think there's an Israeli expression that goes, "God could not be everywhere, and that's why He made mothers." I really love that expression. So, how does one align oneself so that in terms of what God does, you can be God's hands, God's lips, God's feet, metaphorically speaking?
Sure. Two things I would say. You have to be a person who has a natural love for God. You may not know God, but you love God, you think about God, you think God is wonderful, you appreciate God, you include God in everything. Love God. God will, feel that, notice that, respond to that. You have an account going on, a relationship going on. And also, love humanity.
Mm-hmm.
One who has these two, great love for God, great love for humanity, that's a good choice for an instrument. And I think God will choose such ones.
Mm-hmm. The love that you're speaking of is that there's very different types of love, especially when it comes to God, just as we have very different types of love here on earth. What is the quality of the love that you are referring to that will invoke God into one's life?
I think it's to do with just knowing God is there, referring yourself to God frequently, feeling the presence of God frequently, appreciating, kind of including God in what you do, talking to God, all this sort of thing, making your relationship with God a living, real part of your life. That's the key.
Okay, so God's has a vocation. Is it an ongoing thing, or are there particular times in human history where He has specific jobs and other times doesn't?
I think the main one is what happens when the world or the history of the world comes to the point where it reaches the end and there is a new beginning.
Which time is now?
Well, the signs of that are all around us. So there's a lot of people who are saying, according to the scriptures, doesn't matter which religion, God should be around here somewhere because this is going on, this is going on. The four horses of the apocalypse seem to be, galloping around quite enthusiastically. And so, the question many people are having is, well, where is God in all this? Because God is really needed at such a time. And of course, God is very unknown, unseen. And there is the expression, God comes secretly like a thief in the night. So the question of recognizing God, maybe not everyone will see. Someone will see, someone else will not see. But I think definitely the most active period of time is when everything that has gone wrong, everything that is negative, everything that is out of order, that is really chaotic, is turned from that craziness, that chaos, that everything breaking apart, and God will bring everything into order, to beauty, to sympathy, to purity, to being intelligent, a beautiful society. All the attributes of nature are in harmony and stable, I think this is what God does at the time when everything goes out of order, brings it into order, and then it is sustained for a long period of time.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing. There you go, brothers and sisters. We've learned today that God has a vocation, a very specific one, and He also needs helpers as far as His job is concerned. And God's job is to clean up, to purify, and to heal that which is broken in this world. Sister Denise has shared very beautifully as to how He gets this done and how you can become part of His task here on earth. So I do hope that today's episode has been of some benefit to you, and we wish to see you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.